Yep.
Did you do it in Sunday?
I don't know if I could do that again.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
But, yeah, I'll be going to Ecuador in January for six or 7 months, doing some independent research through a different faculty member in the medical school. So I could do some site visits if you coordinate.
Can you share a little more about the community, how its location, activities, and if you stay in their homes?
The actual population is slipping my mind right now, but 1,500 people. And you're wondering their home settings or?
Or how far is it from people?
Sure.
It's about an hour and a half from Quito, right outside of Cotacachi. I don't know how familiar you are with Ecuador. Or near to Otavalo, the big market city in Ecuador. It's closer to Cotacachi than Otavalo, but Cotacachi's, yeah. And they're an indigenous community in the Andes of Ecuador. And I don't know.
It's 1,500, and it's a small community, so homes are somewhat spread out, in the countryside. There's not like a downtown center of the community, but they do have some central community buildings. There's a community center, a daycare, a school, but not like a high school. They go to Cotacachi for high school, if at all.
Mm-hmm. How was your experience staying in the home?
It was nice. We all stayed in separate homes within the community, and we ate our meals with the family. I mean, we were only there for 3 days, so it wasn't a very long time, but it was, we got a little glimpse into their life, so it was nice.
And actually, the community, since I've been going there, has changed a fair bit. When we first went there wasn't internet, and now there's an internet cafe there now. One of the women had, this is part of, they have 3 or 4 computers in the house. And there's also on the other side of town, I don't think anyone's saying it, but there's a pretty nice hospital that somebody built that is beautiful traditional home and wonderfully appointed, and it's a place, where they're trying, because there's this ecotourism emphasis there, they're trying to get going, with that. We don't stay there because we have a relationship that it benefits these homes if we stay and pay these families rather than staying at the fancier place. I mean, it's still simple, but it's a fancier place. And in fact, there were even a little bit of tension about where we should stay. So people were afraid we were going to work with someone else. And no, we only call you. So, but the homestay is pretty comfortable, and they're learning how to host, and they're trying to do that. And I think there's some things.
Yeah.
Do they sell, where else do they sell this jewelry? Somebody's been in the business for 20 years. Have they been making jewelry that whole time?
Not the entire.
And are they selling their jewelry in the markets in Cotacachi and Iguala?
Yeah, they haven't been making jewelry for the entire 24 years, but they have been selling jewelry in Ecuador in the markets for quite a while. But one of their biggest challenges with that is that, I don't know how many of you have been to Ecuador, but in the markets there, from stand to stand, the products are very similar. And so these necklaces, it's kind of just luck if a tourist walks up to your stand and decides to buy from you versus another vendor. So that was one of the things we worked with, was to kind of differentiate their product and work on refining things so that they did, when people came to the market, their products looked different than the other people's. Yeah. They were very receptive to what we had to say, but I think the reason for that was because Lori had this relationship with the community. She had been going there for quite a while, doing other projects, so she had built this trust already. I think if we had walked into a community that we had never been in, we wouldn't have had the same, response that we did from the women. Yeah, we did another visit while we were in Ecuador on the coast with a group that we had kind of a tie with. Another UW professor had worked with these women in the past, but not as much of a relationship as we had with the women in La Calera. And we didn't do as much work with them, but it was a different feeling with, we were there just as a group of outsiders looking in on what their work was. So that's something that definitely, if we are to develop future sites, we have to build that trust before we can, go in and try to adapt these products.
And I think another important point with that was too that the women really were taking ownership of the jewelry making. Like they approached Lori. It wasn't like we were coming in as an outside entity trying to help them. They wanted this for themselves, so they took value in the resources that we were able to provide them.
I think also when we do this, the relationship part is really important, and there's a lot of, friendships involved and just giving and all that, and I think that we do frame all of our service learning courses, the language that we use in the community is, we have these wonderful students who pick them really carefully and have a lot of things to share, and we have picked their community because we'd like you to be their teachers, because there's things they want to learn. So it really is a teacher-learner, learner-teacher relationship that they feel good about. I mean, that they don't, it's not like they think they can't learn anything from our students, but the idea that it's only going to be one way is not what they're hearing. And then there's also the personal part of maintaining relationships. And Frank has been through some anthropologist there for years, Doug, and I also try to do so. I do check, I do connect with Laura several times a year, and I brought my daughter, and so and I don't know what she thinks the work plan is. I mean, in her mind, I brought my son, it's time for me to bring my daughter, and sometimes I think that was a task. It was just as important to the relationship and the trust as whether we were getting the work that she asked us to do done, because like we're sharing stuff about our family, which is so important. So the professional and personal dimensions to yourself that we think about really aren't their categories of being when they're thinking that because they're not at work. They're farming, they're talking, they're watching, they're sort of always and never working. And the thing that I like, story that I like to tell is that picture that you have with everybody in their dresses my favorite moment was not this moment, but like 5 minutes before this moment. All the students, we were all around the table together. There was a cat on the table, there was a baby on the couch. We're all kind of like focusing them all off. And there was a lot of noise and seats on the floor, and people were sitting there napkins and this, and it just kind of very chaotic. And I said to Mom, Miranda, what are we doing here next week? We thought it was like 2 o'clock, and having you guys all getting in additional shirts and laying off the jewelry so we could use that picture in the sale. And like, 5 minutes later, they were all in front of this photo. So it's such a lie, which is why I love the photos, because the real work is so messy and sort of friendly. And if you try to set it up like this, you work, it probably would have felt more comfortable. But it was kind of like,
It was
very
more like,
fluid and
like this.
except there's no pattern paper right now. But, that's to me, anyway, it's a great justification.
How much time do they spend working on the building? Like you mentioned, and I'm sure that they have other responsibilities.
Yeah, well, all of the women, this is not their primary economic activity. A lot of them work in agriculture or at the daycare or in other things. So this is kind of a side project for them. So they'll get together in the evenings and work on it, with all of their children once they're all home from school or on a weekend day. So it's not like this is a 9 to 5 kind of activity for them. It's just when they find time to all get together and work on it.
It's more like a time per week kind of thing, or not. It just fluctuates. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any other business culture differences? Lori mentioned that inventory was one of the things that we said. Do you notice anything else that is hard to communicate or instill we hadn't thought of? And then the second question is, are you seniors, and when you graduate, are there going to be 2 new liaisons, like you or UW that you take over, or what's the long
Well, their first question about the differences in business culture, I guess. I guess I was doing the cost analysis. So I was constantly taking notes of like how much this piece of string costs, and I think I was really detail focused, and there wasn't a lot of detail focus simply because things are not the way things are purchased, the way like the raw materials are purchased are a little differently, or is a little different. But then keeping track of all those details was different in standardizing the products as well. Like this is a certain length, this has so many beads. Just the attitude towards that, I think they were a little more lenient compared to what we would do, which was part of the project to develop the quality for an international market.
And also just things with like business, I guess, systems, kind of like we had talked to them about keeping a journal of their orders and when they're placed and when they need to be ready by. And to them, I think at first it was kind of humorous that you would keep it that official, you know, because for them it was just scribbled on a piece of paper and that wasn't something you needed to keep track of over time. As well as things like shipping. Initially, they would ship us a box of the necklaces all just, you know, clumped in the box, and when they would arrive a month later, you had this giant tangle of jewelry that you were trying to sort through. So we worked with them on packaging the jewelry into smaller groups so that it was easier to sort through when we got it. So things like that just, you know, were differences, I guess, in standards or systems.
And the long-term goals. I am a fifth-year student. Carybeth is a senior. And Molly, who is here, who was with us, she had recently graduated. And then another student had recently graduated, and the fifth student is a junior this year. So we are all upperclassmen, going in different directions. Which is part of the reason we're trying to develop the Wisconsin Without Borders and the student organization to kind of piggyback off the field experience that Janet is planning in January to maintain a future involvement. We don't have like students we know who are going to be those contact people like we aren't, but that's kind of in development right now.
And we are looking for students to go on that field course with Janet, and the long-term relationship really will be maintained by Janet and Lori because students do come and go. And so that's one part about the, I guess, service learning model that is hard, is that we long-term probably won't be part of this.
But I will say that one thing that happens with the students is like, there is this continuity with the students because of the students come and go, we provide continuity, but you know, they love our students because they love last year's students, and in some ways they understand that, you know, it's sort of like Carybeth sent them this other student, it's just like a UW student, certain things. So there is some building in the relationship with the students, even though the students change, and that sounds great, but it really does happen. We saw that to be a really stark example when we went to the community versus going back. Because I said, you know, part of why it works is because we've been coming for a long time, don't think it's an overnight thing, and we didn't really realize it until we went to the other one. And I think it was you, Carybeth, like, wow, now we can see the comparison and we don't have any relationship. So, it wasn't bad, it's just we talked to different things to do it.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I have a question about, are you using any local materials?
Yeah.
Is that part of the marketing strategy?
Yeah, these are actually all local materials that they purchase in Otavalo, one of the bigger cities near them. And they're tropical seeds, so they're sustainable. And yeah, they're able to get it all right near their community.
So going up, just elaborating a little more, the seeds, they're different. There's 3 different sizes that they typically use, and they're like grown in the country, and they're harvested there, and they buy them from a man who has a workshop who processes the seeds to become the beads. So it is a local, we're not bringing in outside materials, it's a local sourced product.
One thing that we're really interested in, we live in this area, don't have that particular tree, they're plum seeds, so there's various different kinds of
Yeah.
Just an example of the variety of colors that they have to work with in the beads. Yeah, if you,
Okay. Yeah, so if you guys want to look at the jewelry we have back there, you can continue to ask us questions as well. So, thank you.
thank you.
or it could just be like, really, we need you to contact him. I guess like maybe those guys.
In spite of its pretensions, the Falange never became a mass fascist party with large working-class membership. Unlike what had happened in Germany and Italy, fascism had not taken root in Spain before the war. For one thing, the economic conditions were very different. Spain was still economically in the 19th century. The groups that might have been attracted by fascism were either satisfied by conventional politics or just non-existent. There was no large petty bourgeoisie scarred by recession or defeat in a world war. The middle class was reassured that the dominant presence of the army would protect them from revolution, and the working class had suffered no disappointment that might provoke them to find an alternative to Marxist, socialist, or anarchist ideals. In 1936, however, after the February elections when democracy disintegrated into political violence, conservative youth had begun to defect to the radical alternative, and once the war began, people flocked to the Falange. It was a demonstration of allegiance to the nationalist cause, and moreover, with a purge of working-class organizations, it became a safe haven for anybody whose background was suspiciously leftist. The blue shirt became known as a salvavidas, a life jacket. Some nationalists, however, viewed the Falange's populist and violent image with distaste.
There were many people who joined the Phalangists, but I could never join them because I did not consider them to be virtuous in the Christian sense of the term. I did not think that the Phalangists were Christians. I did not think that they acted in a way that I considered to be correct, and I never liked them. There was a phobia against Phalangism in my family, partly because the Theta and the Falange were totally opposed to each other, and we all belonged to the Theta.
The greatest contrast to the Falange was another faction of nationalists, the Carybeth, the deeply traditionalist group based in Navarre. They lived in the romantic, almost medieval past.
We were defending God, the fatherland, and our king. This was the traditional slogan of Carybeth. By God, we meant religion in its true sense, with no interference by the church in the government of the state. As for politics, we were in favor of regional rights, that is, we saw Spain as a conglomeration of regions which have from time to time been united by a common cause of Spanish nationality.
Franco was no fool. He recognized the potential danger of disunity in the nationalist camp. To his brother-in-law, Ramon Serrano Sr., he gave the job of devising a formula for uniting the factions.
Los objetivos eran evitar las discordias y las...
The objectives were to avoid internal conflicts and rivalry, which were bound to debilitate the nascent state. This was Franco's view, and as commander-in-chief and leader in the war,
a school, but not like a high school. They go to Cotacachi for high school, if at all.
It was nice. We all stayed in separate homes within the community, and we ate our meals with the family. I mean, we were only there for 3 days, so it wasn't a very long time, but it was, we got a little glimpse into their life, so it was nice.
And actually, the community, since I've been going there, has changed a fair bit. When we first went there, there wasn't internet, and now there's an internet cafe, and one of the women had, this is part of, they have 3 or 4 computers in the house. And there's also on the other side of town, I don't think anyone stated, but there's a pretty nice hospital that somebody built that is beautiful traditional home and wonderfully appointed, and it's nice to know where they're trying, because there's this
population is slipping my mind right now, but 1,500 people, and you're wondering their home settings or?
Or how far is it from people?
Sure.
It's about an hour and a half from Quito, right outside of Cotacachi. I don't know how familiar you are with Ecuador. Or near to Otavalo, the big market city in Ecuador. It's closer to Cotacachi than Otavalo, but Cotacachi's, yeah, yeah. And they're an indigenous community in the Andes of Ecuador, and I don't know.
It's 1,500, and it's a small community, so homes are somewhat spread out, in the countryside. There's not like a downtown center of the community, but they do have some central community buildings. There's a community center, a daycare.
These necklaces, it's kind of just luck if a tourist walks up to your stand and decides to buy from you versus another vendor. So that was one of the things we worked with, was to kind of differentiate their product and work on refining things so that they did, when people came to the market, their products looked different than the other people's. Yeah. Not the entire.
And are they selling their jewelry in the markets in Cotacachi and Ecuador?
Yeah, they haven't been making jewelry for the entire 24 years, but they have been selling jewelry in Ecuador in the markets for quite a while. But one of their biggest challenges with that is that, I don't know how many of you have been to Ecuador, but in the markets there, from stand to stand, the products are very similar. And so
Yep. I don't know if I could do that again. Yeah, I'll be going to Ecuador in January for six or 7 months, doing some independent research through a different faculty member in the medical school. So I could do some site visits if you coordinate.
Can you tell me more about the community, how location, activities, and if you stay in their home?
The actual population